Hi friends, welcome to my video. In Toronto, we have already had our very first snowfall. It was about 18 centimeters of snow, which very much for me signifies the beginning of soup season. So I will be sharing a recipe today for a roasted butternut squash soup. Now in Toronto, we are also back in lockdown, back to social distancing, and for the first time ever, we decided to experiment and order a box of organic produce. I won't say too much about the cost or company in this video, but we ordered what was called a small fruit and veggie box. In the box was a lovely butternut squash, and I decided to make a roasted butternut squash soup. And to honor this very large and attractive organic butternut squash, I really wanted to use as much of the squash as possible. So I will also show you how to make a very delicious and crunchy topping from the seeds. Now, before we go any further, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel because I post recipes every Monday. So let's get started with this delicious and creamy butternut squash soup.
I want it all. I had a feeling, but the feeling is all gone.
This is a simple soup and it uses minimal ingredients. There's the squash itself, a bit of onion, garlic, salt and pepper, and some olive oil. But there are some optional ingredients like plain or smoked paprika, some whipping cream or vegan cream, and some microgreens or some fresh herbs of your choice for garnish. Step one is to prepare the squash, and even though this is an organic squash, I did thoroughly wash it. I also opted to peel off some of the little unsightly bits of skin along the exterior of the squash. This is optional. You don't have to do this because the skin itself is pretty tender, and once you roast it, you won't even notice the skin. I was really pleased with the amount of seeds inside this squash. I am a huge fan of the toasted pumpkin seed topping. It adds such a wonderful textural element to this soup. So the next step is to remove the seeds, and this is very easily done simply by scraping them out with a spoon. Then you can set them aside because we will work on them a little bit later. Next, it's time to cut up the squash into roughly 1 inch or 1.5 inch pieces, and a rough chop is totally fine. We're not aiming for perfection because these are going to be roasted. They are going to soften in the oven. Next, 2 cloves of garlic, and I'm putting those right in with the squash. I'm just putting everything on this plate, and then this plate is going to be dumped onto a sheet pan afterwards. So this onion is one of the onions from the organic veggie box. It was actually like a conjoined onion, so I just pulled off a piece that I wanted and gave that a rough chop as well. As I was cutting up this squash, I realized that it was so much bigger than I thought it was, and it would have made way too much soup for 2 people. So I cut up the remaining squash, put it in a bag, and popped it into my freezer. Picking up where we left off, the squash, chopped onion, cloves of garlic, those go onto a sheet pan, and you just need to drizzle them with a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper. That's it. Nothing extraneous. This is a very simple recipe. We're really just trying to honor that squash and bring out its natural flavors. That goes into the oven at 425 degrees, and it'll be in there for about 25 minutes. Now we can work on the seeds. So just give them a bit of a rinse, pull out any of the membranes, and please excuse the baby bottles in our sink. It's virtually impossible for us not to have a bottle in the sink right now. Next, I'm simply removing the excess water from the seeds. I'm using a simple kitchen towel to do this, giving them a good pat dry, just trying to remove any moisture because we don't want to put these into the oven with any moisture. Then they won't toast, they'll just steam. And that's really not what we're going for. Once the seeds are dry, you can transfer them to a small bowl, and we are going to dress them with some very simple spices. A little bit of olive oil, some salt, and pepper. Now, I said that the paprika was optional. I like to add some of the paprika onto the seeds, but if you don't have this, just add some black pepper. That will be delicious as well. And once these are combined with the spices, it's time to put them onto another sheet pan, and they will go into the oven as well. The time that it takes you to do this, to rinse the seeds, dress them, put them on another sheet pan, it could be anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, and that's okay. If your squash is roasting in the oven at the same time, you can put these on the rack above with whatever time is left. Maybe it's about 10 to 12 minutes, and that could be enough for you to just grab a cup of coffee while you wait. The squash was roasting for 25 minutes. If you managed to get the seeds in at the last 10 to 12 minute mark, then everything should be done around the same time. Here's a look at my squash, onions, and garlic. You can see I have some really nice roasted color on those veggies, and that's really going to add a very beautiful flavor to our soup. So we're going to get started with a large stock pot on medium high. You don't have to add any more oil to this, but I had a few drops left of the olive oil, so I simply added that at the bottom of the pan, but it's not essential. Go ahead and transfer the squash, onions, and garlic to this stock pot, and we are going to keep cooking this a little bit, just a little bit more, till it's mushy. At this point, we do need to add some water or some vegetable stock. I didn't have vegetable stock, so I just added water, and my soup was still delicious, but if you have vegetable stock, it will add an extra layer of flavor to this. In addition, I also like to add a little more salt and pepper. Then you can simply cover this up and allow it to cook. Let it come up to a boil for about 5 to 7 minutes. That should be enough. Now here's a look at my seeds. They are nice and crispy. I also want to acknowledge the fact that I know that this sheet pan is dark and ugly, okay? I haven't washed it in years, nor should you wash your sheet pan, okay? Leave it seasoned. That's how you get a nice seasoned sheet pan. All right, coming back to the soup, I am now using my immersion blender to puree this and get a nice velvety texture. If you need to add a bit of water to help your blender, go ahead and do so. And then at the very end, when you've switched off the stove, add about a 1/4 cup of whipping cream or vegan cream. Add it right before you serve the soup because you don't want to have to bring this up to a boil or heat it up once you add that cream. You just want to be able to serve it right away. And that is exactly what I'm doing. I've ladled out a large portion of this soup. I'm dressing it with a little bit more of that whipping cream, trying to make it look attractive, but not constructed, if that makes sense. Not as if I tried too hard. So I've added a bit of the microgreens on top, and I'm sprinkling on my toasted seeds. If you don't have microgreens, that's perfectly fine. Just add some of your favorite freshly chopped herbs. And there you have a very delicious bowl of soup to keep you warm during this cold weather. I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and if you did, then give it a like, subscribe to my channel, show me some love, and I will see you again next week with another recipe. Okay, bye!